So, as Wetzel said, I am Christopher Daniel, and today we will be talking about Magento and API support with Magento. So, let's see that. So, I am working at a company called Zilka Technology, and then I am a full stack certified Magento developer, and then I am also a PWS Studio contributor. So, let's see. Okay. So, whenever you come to develop APIs, so we have to ask a question, why we need APIs at first? We have, along with Magento, a standard monolith architecture. We have a front end and a Luma front end and a back end. So, whenever we want to change some UI in the front end, we will go through a lot of UI components. We have to change the theme. It's a lot of headache. So, Magento came with other headless approaches like PWS Studio and some other vendors like Vue Storefront introduced their storefronts, and Deity came with their own Deity Falcon. Lot of things came. So, they need APIs. So, this is our agenda today. We will see about APIs, and then we will see about REST GraphQL and when to use REST, when to use GraphQL, and then we will see about async and bulk APIs. How many of you know about async APIs here? Very few people. So, you will be very interested about this. And then there is a new thing coming up in Magento 2.4 that is called the Storefront API. How many of you know about Storefront API? Wow, I need this. Okay, let's see. First, we have to know that why we need APIs. We are going towards a headless storefront. We want to come out of the we want to come out of legacy storefront like Luma to a completely headless PWS Studio or Vue Storefront or AEM based SIF kind of frameworks. So, to achieve that we need APIs. We need to get data from our Magento backend and we have to feed it to this storefronts. So, we need APIs. And second, our Magento architecture is evolving. In the beginning, we had a monolith architecture. We had the storefront and the backend is highly coupled. We will have to manage our sessions. We have a lot of inter-process communications, and that all created a lot of mess. But in the future, we will go to service isolated architecture. So, what is service isolated architecture? So, for example, you have a storefront and there is a checkout service, and then there is catalog service, and then there is a gift registry service. All this will work independently, not like our monolith service. So, everything will be isolated, and if you want to extend your gift card gift functionality, you can remove it completely and put a new API, put a new implementation, and then you can make it work like charm. So, that's it, the service isolated architecture. And also you can extend it like a particular piece of functionality alone. You don't want to have to replace the entire functionality. You can add a piece of functionality or completely change the functionality. So, this is very hard with monolith architecture, but it will be very easy with service isolated architecture. Then you will have a better developer experience with these APIs. So, how you can say you have a better developer experience? Whenever I develop a feature, I always have the thought like, will this feature work completely perfectly on production? So, what I have to do, I have to write some unit tests, some integration tests, and then other tests to make myself confident. Also make my reviewers to get the code committed to the source tree. So, what makes it possible? So, if you work on a monolith architecture, you cannot do testing extensively. You cannot write unit tests. You cannot write. You can probably write a unit test, but you cannot go beyond that. You cannot write a complete integration test. To avoid all this, you can go to APIs. You can write a particular API and you can test it with your web API tests. So it will increase your confidence, and then you will focus only on your logic, and you don't need to care about the session, how to handle your session, what is your front-end logic, no block logic. So it gives a better developer experience than the legacy storefront. So we can see what Magento offers now. So there is a SOAP API, and then there is REST APIs, and then GraphQL APIs. So the SOAP APIs, which is a bit old now, people use it, but I personally have not worked in any SOAP APIs. Then there is REST APIs we use in our day-to-day applications, like in checkouts, in cart, and lot of other things. And then there is GraphQL. It is a hype today, and a lot of people use it, and people are adapting more towards it, and people are moving towards GraphQL. But let's see what we should use when it comes to our requirements. It is not a silver bullet. You cannot say you should only use GraphQL and avoid all other. So let's see when to use GraphQL and when to use REST. We will see. We will have a more analysis on when REST performs best and when GraphQL performs best. So this is the next topic. We will see about REST, we will see about GraphQL, and then we will see about REST versus GraphQL. So REST was developed to solve what are the problems which we faced in SOAP. In SOAP, everything was exposed as services. So if you want to update a customer a name, you have to write a service. To update a customer's age, you have to write a service. But in REST, everything is exposed as resource. So if you want to update some details of a customer, you will have a customer endpoint, and the customer endpoint you will access with your put API and put request, and then it will be solved. If you want to create a new customer, you will have the post API, and then you will do that. But in SOAP, you get lots of APIs. Your front-end engineer will be overwhelming with APIs. So REST solved that problem, and then GraphQL came. They gave just one API. They gave just one API, and then they just provided payload. You just hit the payload, and then you will get you will create a new resource, or you will get the data from the new resource. So REST is what I'm trying to say is REST is not outdated. It's still capable of doing wonders, and it will drive the future with GraphQL. So let's see what are the advantages when we use REST. In Magento, we don't have a complete set of authentication with GraphQL still now, but REST still provides varied levels of authentication. You will create ACL records. You will write this particular admin user has to just use this resources, and he should not use this resources. For example, customer related user who handles customer records should access only customer related and then he cannot access your products or order or something like that. And then in REST applications, you will get all the data, and in GraphQL you will get very little. Whatever you want, you will get from GraphQL. But in your Magento admin panel, you will need all the data. So in that case, you don't need a GraphQL API. It is not wise decision to use GraphQL in your backend admin. So in CRUD applications, REST plays the best role. So let's come to GraphQL. So Facebook had a pretty bad problem in 2012. They had a large number of users coming to Facebook every day, and lot of devices were introduced. They had to support mobile, they have to support desktop, they have to support tablet, and all these user interfaces are completely different. And for the desktop they need all the information, for mobile they need just a little information, and for tablet they need a little more information. To support all this, they came with idea called backend for frontends. So what is backend for frontend? It's we will write a API that only serves for desktop, and then there is a API that only serves for mobile, and then there is a API that supports only tablet. So that created a lot of chaos, and then they were not able to maintain that. So they came with the idea we should have only one API. It will be like a SQL like query. Whatever you want, you will get the data from that API and then show it in the front end. So for example, you can see there is a user resource. You will ask for the ID and then the name, and you have to give I want the number one user's name. So you will get that. If you want age, you will get that. In the rest, you will get name, age, profile photo, everything. So this is a boon for the front-end developers, also the people who manage the APIs. And then, so there is a question, should I use GraphQL? So Magento has adopted GraphQL back in 2018, though it is introduced to the world in 2015. Yes, they introduced it in 2018. So you can say that is the Magento implementation currently is stable or not? Because I got so curious about GraphQL when Magento introduced it, and I installed 2.3.0 version, and then I went to test it. I felt the lot of things were missing in GraphQL implementation than the original implementation. They don't support caching in GraphQL, which is a main thing, and then they didn't support authentication in GraphQL, but slowly they started improving it, and today we have token-based authentication in GraphQL, and then we have server-side caching in GraphQL, and then we have client-side caching in GraphQL. Before 2.3.2 there were no GET request in GraphQL, and now we have GET request in GraphQL, and we will see more and more improvements in GraphQL. Magento 2.4 has around the complete rewrite of GraphQL engine. So we will have, do you remember how many of you attend GC Response PWA session, GC's PWA session? So you may see that Magento doesn't have an intermediate layer, that is the middleware to between the backend and the front end, right? But in 2.4 we will have a middleware, and then we will discuss it at the end of the presentation. Okay, so this is the main question we will face every time. Is it only for PWA? Can't we use that in our regular storefronts like Lumosor? So we can use that. You can go and watch your MageDB subscription. There is a POC done by Vinay Kub, and then he will use the GraphQL in Lumostor with Apollo Boost Magento module. So Apollo Boost is a library. He converted it to Recure.js standard, and then he declared it as a Magento Recure.js dependency, and then hidden. It is a nice screencast. Please watch it if you have MageDB subscription. Then you will see what are the differences between REST and GraphQL, when you should go for REST, when you should go for GraphQL. This is a very important part. So when it comes to front end, we need to cache data, because we cannot put all our data into, we cannot get data every time from the backend. So caching is more important when it comes to APIs. So REST by default is handled by the browser. If you write a GET API, if you hit the REST API with a GET request, it will be handled by the browser itself. So there is no pain point for front-end developer. But for GraphQL, you have to declare a cache strategy, and then you have to handle it. It may be bit hard for new beginners, and there is a learning curve in caching of data. So there may you will get a lot of situations where you have to clear the cache in the front end application, and then sometimes your cache may not warmed up. So you may face that situations when you use GraphQL. So you have to be very picky when you choose a GraphQL caching strategy. And the next is in the REST we have multiple endpoints, and then in GraphQL there is a single endpoint. And it will give you a better developer experience. So when you say multiple endpoints, it doesn't mean that when you say the multiple endpoint, it doesn't mean that it is hard to remember that, but you can have a Swagger API and then you can do stuff. But it depends when you expose it to a third-party vendor. When you when it is fed by some other party. So GraphQL, you have to educate them to use your caching strategy, and then but they have the advantage, they know the API very well, and then they see the introspection schema, and then they can learn it from it. But in REST, you have to teach them all the APIs, you have to give the document, and then do it. Then overfetching and underfetching of data in Magento in REST. So this is already seen. When you hit the user API, you get all the data, and then sometimes you have to build a complex data panel where you need to show a lot of connected graph-like situation. You need to show the user, you need to show the how much products they have brought, how much order they have placed. In that case, REST doesn't work well. In that case, GraphQL, you can get the card data, everything in a well structured manner. So it works well. And then, as I already said, API contracts can be shared through Swagger, and GraphQL has inbuilt support for sharing the API contracts. It is the introspection schema. And REST doesn't have a strict type of contract, but GraphQL has a strict type of contract. You hit the API, and you have to give an int for whatever mentioned, but you can give anything in REST. No server-side caching in GraphQL, in REST, but there is server-side caching in GraphQL. You can use Varnish or Fastly to cache the data. And async APIs are supported in REST. I will explain async APIs later. And there is a concept called subscription in GraphQL, which is not currently supported in Magento, but may be supported in 2.4. And then you know the tools, Postman and Swagger for REST, and then ChromeQL and other stuff for GraphQL. Then we will see about async and bulk APIs. So there was a company called Magento, and then they had a unique problem. There was a client to them, and then they had a ERP system. They had to import products when in the business SaaS. Okay, so the customers came in, they started to buy products, and then they started importing products from the backend. So what happened? They had MySQL deadlocks, the performance went down, and then there was a lot of issues came. So they had to work, they have to restart their MySQL, a lot of issues happened. So they came up with the approach named async APIs. So what happened is, whenever you import a data, they send it to a async API, they developed the async API and fed it to it. So whenever the CPU load is down, the async API started to send data to that consumer, and then to the queue, and the queue consumed and processed the import. So so this is the diagram for this is the sample architecture of that. So you have a lot of REST APIs pointing the resources. For example, products, you hit that product API to import a resource. At the same time, the customer will hit your front end with some APIs, and then the async layer, it will intercept all the requests and look for whether it is async or not with the header. And then if it is async API, it will generate a UUID, and then it will put the messages in the queue, and then it will register it to you. So you will have a list of UUIDs for all the payloads, and then it will be pushed to the queue. In the queue, it will wait for the CPU to get, if the CPU load is down, and it will process. And if you want to know what is the status of the resource, for example, I have created a product. If you want to know what is the status of the product, there is a API called status API. You hit that and you will get whether it is processed or completed or failed. So the queue processes the messages, and then there is two APIs, async and bulk. If it goes to async, it will process a single item, and then it will fix the deadlocks, and then it will do the required operation. If it is bulk, it will create a batches of data, and then it will optimize the transactions. Finally, it will fire group operation events, like if it is insert, it will do multiple insert. If it is update, it will do multiple updates. So overall, it will be a highly optimized solution. So what are the benefits of async and bulk API? You will get fault tolerance with ERP system. So if your ERP fails or something like that, or your API doesn't hit properly, you will note it by the status API. And then there is a better error reporting with async APIs. You can hit the particular, you will get the UUID, and if you pass a UUID to the API, you will know whether the process is done correctly or not. And then there is a community project called async import. You have, because as a developer, we have to force our clients to use this, right? So they don't know how to generate the payload and hit the APIs. So this async import, what it will do is, you will have a CSV file. The CSV file will be converted into the payloads, and then it will hit the async APIs or bulk APIs, and then you will the request will be processed. So you can see this is the synchronous API, the normal REST API for single one or two batch size. It will take a less amount of time, and when the batch size is increased, you will get tons of time. You will add 400 to 500, and then there is a synchronous API, async API. And then this is a bulk API. So you can see there is a consistent amount of time taken by the bulk API. Then there is the new storefront API. This is what discussed by Jesse today, and then it will be having it will solve all the performance issues with the current GraphQL engine, and then there is a complete separation of front end and back end. So you will have this is a merchant hitting the normal Magento storefront, and then you will have the Magento modules here, and there will be business event publishers here, and then if you do product import or something like that, it will be processed by the webhook or event bus, and then it will be provided to a connector application. This connector application is a completely new concept, and then it will be communicating with our Magento with web APIs. Then you will see there is this is the same connector application as before. You will have the same event bus, and this is the storefront application. You will have a MongoDB or Elasticsearch storage, and then you will hit this application with the shopper, and then you will get data from your MongoDB, and then it will get data from your connector application. If the point about this is, if your Magento instance fails, this MongoDB or Elasticsearch storage will be up and it will serve you. And if your storefront application is failed, still you can have the Magento backend. And then yeah, that's it.
Thank you for sharing the power of API.